Right, looking at Catalan Dragons then, you've got 4 players that we're going to have a look at who are coming over from the NRL this year into the Super League. Some of them we already know, some of them we don't know so well. So first one, Nick Cotric. What can you tell us about Nick Cotric?
Yeah, he's a bit of a journeyman winger. He did have a really good strike rate early in his career. He had a strike rate of roughly 1 try in 2 games. And that was between 2017 and 2020. He went briefly to the Bulldogs, played about 12 or 13 games, didn't impress that much, and he went back to Canberra. But he's really struggled to get a starting role because Xavier Savage has emerged. And Xavier Savage was supposed to be a fullback, but they've moved him to the wing. He's done really well. And Cotric has really struggled to get a look in pretty much. He's of Serbian descent. I'd probably classify him as a journeyman winger. No different to your sort of middle of the road Super League winger, really. He's a good finisher, plays better on the right than he does on the left. And he didn't really have that much in front of him to try and displace. He had Albert Hopewate, and he's not even one of the better Hopowates, like the Tongan kid, Lehigh. Yeah. And Savage had been injured for long periods. So a bit of a left field one there for me. Not that much to say about him. I mean, you wouldn't really notice him.
Right.
He'll probably do all right, but, I'd have him as probably a 6 out of 10.
That's interesting.
Slightly left field, probably the least interesting of the 4.
Yeah, but I mean, he's been brought in to replace Tom Johnston, who is, lightning. He's been one of the standout wingers.
You got Tommy Makinson coming over at Catalan as well. So, do you think he's just there going to be to make up the numbers? Bit of a.
I think he's backup.
Right.
I don't think he's first team.
Okay, so who's next then? We'll move on to Tevita Pangai, a bit of an exciting one. What can you tell us about him?
Let's put it this way. If you wanted your house demolished by someone using their bare hands, you'd call Tevita Pangai.
Right. It's funny you say
this guy is a beast. Absolute beast. To call him a weapon is an understatement. I'd call him probably a weapon of mass destruction.
Right.
He is huge. He's one of the best offloaders you're likely to see. He's of Tongan descent, but he's got a screw loose. And to say he's got a screw loose is a bit of an understatement. He was heavily fined during COVID for multiple breaches of COVID. I think we're talking somewhere between 25 and 30 breaches.
Right.
And you know how strict they were in Australia and New Zealand with the COVID lockdown. I mean, Djokovic couldn't even get in to play his tennis, could he?
No.
Then he threw his toys out of the pram. But Pangai is a maverick. He's Tongan. He's played for loads of the big clubs. He's played for the Broncos, the Panthers, the Bulldogs. And then he went into boxing briefly. He had, I think, a 5-stint career. Again, fighting people that weren't that well known. And he just said he'd fallen out of love with rugby league. Then about a year and a half ago, he had a fight and he got knocked down in under 60 seconds by a random fighter. And he got very upset. He came out after the fight and he said, in 10 years of playing Super League, I've never even had concussion. So I don't know how this even happened. Obviously, I'm not a boxer.
We spoke.
Guy's a weapon.
We spoke earlier in the show about Jared Warrior-Hargreaves going over at Hull KR, which we're excited about. We can't wait to see him play. Who's most likely to get a red card first?
If they're going to play each other, probably both of them in the same game.
At the same time.
There's going to be a carve-up.
Right.
Yeah, but TPJ could be the most dominant player in the league on his day. He's the best and most effective offloader I've seen in years. He hasn't got his head screwed on properly. He could be the best forward in the league and then completely give up out of nowhere. He also gets frustrated. He gives the ball away. He drops the ball a bit and he gives away silly penalties as well. So he's one of those maverick types. If you see him on form on the screen, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
If you see him on an off day, he's like a blancmange.
God. Reminds me of me. So anyway, one of the interesting things that springs to mind for me is we had Nick Cotric last year. In fact, 2 other Aussie import. Well, no, like Pacific Island imports at Catalan last year. They were more or less like sacked instantly for off the pitch issues. I think they went to a music concert when they weren't allowed to and missed training or something like that. Sacked them straight away. And now you're bringing in this live wire. I'm just wondering, are they a little bit cautious? Are they going to have some like strict rules to keep these guys in check?
You've got to wonder. I mean, you've got a lot of personalities at that club now, and you've got the shadow of Sam Tomkins looming over you. Is it going to be a case of too many egos, too many personalities? He's still there, Tomkins.
Yep.
What's he gonna make of Tevita? I have no idea.
We spoke about Tomkins earlier, just before you came on. Actually, give me your opinion on him. Do you think he's too old now, or do you think he should be going around again?
I think he's. I mean, he spends half his time doing the media. When he was playing last season, he was more interested in bossing people around the park than trying to make something happen himself.
Yeah, I think that's his
role.
role.
For him to hang up his boots. Yeah, hang up your boots. If you want to stay there in a consultancy role or a coaching role, fine. But you don't need to be the center of attention the whole time on TV and on the pitch. Yeah. Focus on one. Do it really well. Make sure you're bringing through the youth. Because now you've got some serious experience at your club. What's going to happen to the youth? They're in a bit of a crossover period, Catalan.
Yeah.
So they were poor last season. They weren't great the year before. What's Tomkins done since his moment of brilliance with that last second try? Yeah. Was it the grand final or was it the semi a couple of years ago?
Semi-final one, taking it to grand final. No, you kind of agree with me. Then I said the same. I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was a wise move for him to go around again. So should we go on to the next player, Luke Keary, halfback, a quality player. You know what can you tell rugby league outsiders fans about Luke Keary?
He's still one of the most intelligent halves around. He can create scoring opportunities. He can lead a team around the park. But I'd say probably in the last couple of years, he's been targeted very, very heavily in defence. And physicality was never his strong point.
Yeah.
But, his age has started to catch up with him as well now. It's a bit of a case of wear and tear. And he's being targeted by the opposition. So, if you have got weapons in your team, the first player you're going to mark out is Keary. So, he's still got it. I wouldn't say he was, as good as he's been in the last 3 or 4 years. He's probably lost a bit of pace. Still very quick mentally. He's definitely got some positives there.
Yeah,
but the question is, are these guys turning up in France for a Bay Cup, or are they turning up to play some serious rugby league?
Yeah, that's always the question when we get Aussie imports coming over that are towards the end of their career, whether they are just there for the payday or they're there to make a difference. I mean, it's no secret Catalan really suffered last year for halfbacks. They didn't have much direction on the field. Sounds like if he has a good season, it could be a good buy for them. That's what it seems like to me. Craig?
Yeah, I agree.
Also,
Well, he is the Irish captain. Yeah, exactly. So I think had he been playing for a more prominent team in the World Cup, you'd have seen him make a lot more impact. He did his best, but your eyes weren't exactly fixed to the screen thinking, wow, this guy's absolute fire, because he didn't really have a chance to shine. So he's not bad. Decent stopgap. He's still, I think, only 32 years old, so he's got time on his side. And Pangai is only actually 28, despite looking 38. So they're probably on the right side of,
Right, well, on the slightly upper end of the age bracket, then Elliot Whitehead, a player we know all about, really, from his time in Super League and playing for England. But Elliot Whitehead, how did he go last year?
Crafty as they come. We love Elliot Whitehead. We think he's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And there's a running joke in the NRL and in the press conferences that none of the Aussies can understand his northern accent. So half of them are sitting there thinking, what did he just say off each other?
Yeah.
And the commentators and the interviewers have had a bit of a nightmare with it too. So early in his career, he did start off with a really good try-scoring rate. Was that at your team? Was that at Bradford Bulls?
Yeah, it was at Bradford. He was scoring almost every other week. He used to have this little... He used to score on the fifth tackle all the time. They had this halfback called Ben Jeffries, who I think's back in Oz now, coaching a Gold Coast. Anyway, he used to do this fifth tackle. Ben Jeffries used to hit this little chip kick across, and Elliot Whitehead, being tallest player on pitch, used to just run into the same gap week in, week out and catch it. I think Bradford scored more tries on fifth tackle than they did any other part of a game, which tells you everything you need to know about him. But yeah, Elliot Whitehead's a great player. He's West Bowling Junior from Bradford. Just hard-working individual. I've always loved watching him play. I'm excited to see how he goes next year.
Yeah. So if Tevita's going to demolish your house with his bare hands, I think Elliot Whitehead would run through a brick wall for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're looking at a 1 in 3 try scoring rate when he was at Bradford, 1 in 2 roughly when he was at Catalans for his first stint, And then I think he was used for impact at Canberra. He scored roughly 1 in 4 or 5. But he's definitely still got it. He was, to a certain degree, the spiritual leader of the Raiders, and he was really, really well loved by everyone. So he's deceptively quick, because despite his size and his age, he does get through the line quite well, quite effectively. He does score tries. He is slightly injury prone, though. His age has caught up with him, and he can get caught out defensively. He's definitely got the physical IQ to make a difference, and we think he's probably one of the better signings that Catalans has made. So I think the youngsters will look up to him as a father figure, and he will be able to take players under his wing. You wouldn't really want TPJ taking the youth under his wing, because he could lead them astray quite quickly.
Sniper, it's been great to have you on again. I'm going to set you a little task, actually, this week. So we've had a question come in from one of our viewers. Obviously, he knows that you know the NRL back to front. He wants to know a little bit more. I think his name's Joe. He sent a question in last week, said...
Fire away.
Sniper,
Yeah.
Can you give us next week an update on the structure of Australian Rugby League? So how it's structured from the NRL down, and which clubs are paired with other clubs in the community game and things like that. So
The different tiers.
yeah, the different tiers and how it's set up in Australia. So that's a bit of homework for next week.
Sure. Thanks very much. Do I get a little Cadbury's cream egg in my stocking for doing that? Do you want to ask the viewer?
You might do. You never know. If we had an address, we could send it to you.
Yeah, but
It's Lapland. I can ask if we can get you a postcode for that.
right.
You know, we'll get that sorted for you. Do you want to move back on to the players after that episode next week?
Well, we'll still do the players next week as well, if that's all right. You pick a team
Okay,
and pick
so
a team.
longer slot then.
Yeah.
Longer slot.
Sniper, can I just ask a question? Like, you know, when you're saying that you've got these ratios of like he's 1 in 4, he's 1 in 5. Like, have you actually got like whether it's a spreadsheet, a diary, a little black book, or whatever of these like figures and data points on all the players?
You've just got to know, haven't you? So
Yeah.
of course we've got a database for everyone in the Super League and everyone in the NRL.
Yeah.
And then we've got an international database as well for some left field ones, because that's where you find the real gems if you're, trying to beat the bookies. You've got to know the players that they don't.
Yeah.
So if there's an obscure Papua New Guinean player that is not signed to any specific club, but you know his attributes, that's where you find your edge.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how to price up Tommy Turbo or, Liam Marshall. When they don't know how to price up those players, that's where we really, really do our best work. So, absolutely.
Fascinating. Yeah, fascinating.
And a black book. Well, yeah, for sure.
Right, so who we got next week? Which team are we going to tackle next week for us?
Who would you like?
Ooh, St Helens. Are there many Aussies come over?
Let's do Saints.
Yeah, Saints.
Let's do Saints.
Saints it is next week then.
Is Welland, are Welland's days numbered?
Yeah, I think so. I think mid-season he'll be out if he don't. If it's not a change in what's happening there.
Okay, so last question I'm going to ask you is, if we were looking at the sack race, which coaches are the top 3 favourites to get sacked next season in Super League? Who do you think it would be in what order?
Ooh.
I think.
I think they're quite settled now.
Well, yeah,
I think last year it was easy, wasn't it, to pick them out?
Yeah, and the ones that, like, for example,
I think this might sound. I think Danny Maguire is probably going to start ahead of everybody else. He's completely unproven. So if they have a shocker as soon as season starts, if they don't win it first 10 games or something, I think the new owner might be just looking at him going, I think I've made a mistake here. So I think Danny Maguire's leading the sack race before we've even started. But I'm not sure about any of us.
No. I think Paul Wellens is leading the race to be sacked first, followed by Luke Robinson, because Huddersfield are just all over the place. And then third at the minute is Danny Maguire. But I think he can establish himself as a good coach, especially because he's got Brett Delaney there as well, who's renowned as like a top defensive coach. So exciting times for Castleford.
Yeah.
And you?
Yeah. Well, we wish them all the best. I hope I'm wrong and it's not Wellens. I've definitely got Wellens number 1.
Yeah.
I think he's out of his depth there. I think I'm surprised it didn't happen last season, to be honest.
Right, superb, mate.
Yeah.
We'll catch up with you then and speak to you next week.
As always, if you want to get the benefit of the Snipers tips, then there are some links down below where you can join the Sniper Club. And there's a couple of different price points there. Of course, we do get a little bit of a kickback on that. So if you want to support the channel and potentially boost your winnings in regards to Super League and NRL, then check that out down below.